This episode of the AVB Podcast, we've come up to Brantford, Ontario to meet with the lead singer of the Downchild Blues Band, Chuck Jackson. How's it going, man?
It's going great. Good to see you. Thanks for coming.
Thanks.
I like house gigs. I don't have to travel anywhere.
It's nice. Thanks for having us out to your home. I'm excited because, what brought us together on this one is our friend Mr. John Power asked me to open up for a show that you guys have coming up in Windsor, and that sort of put us on this path and thought maybe we'd be able to sit down with you and kind of learn about the history of the Downchild Blues Band.
Yeah, and Downchild has a great history in Windsor too. We
absolutely
played there, man, since the '70s, and looking forward to going back there. And it's a great cause, so we're really looking forward to seeing a lot of our fans out in Windsor.
It's going to be great. Let me get a little bit of. I want to know right about the very beginnings of Chuck Jackson. Tell me about the house you grew up in. Where was it? What was mom and dad like? That kind of thing.
Well, I was actually raised by my grandparents.
Okay.
And in Port Credit, Ontario. Obviously, before Mississauga existed, so it was a little village of Port Credit. My grandfather was a square dance caller and played the spoons.
Get out.
Yeah, and he'd be on a show out of Hamilton. It was called the Bill Long Show on CHCH-TV.
Okay.
And they would, tape it on Saturday afternoons. And then everybody'd come back to our house and in the kitchen, have a big kitchen party with fiddles and guitars, and my grandfather would sing and play.
So we're talking spoons, fiddles, and in a kitchen. It sounds to me like there might be some East Coast background.
Oh, there was definitely some East Coast folks hanging around. We didn't have a lot of money. We were very poor, so we used to actually take in some East Coast boarders and stuff. And but that was back in the days, like the early '60s. That on the weekends you didn't sit around and watch television. You entertained yourself. And so heavily country music. I was raised early, listening to, Hank Williams, and Hank Williams was basically the first blues I knew of.
Right.
And Kitty Wells and all that stuff, and sing-alongs, and
music was important in the house, though, right?
very important. Yeah. In our whole neighborhood, actually.
Really?
Yeah.
How so? Explain to me.
Well, we had our next door neighbors were from Quebec, and they had, you go in the basement and they had the whole basement full of equipment, and the whole family played drums, and
really,
so we'd get over there and jam, and then in the summertime, we'd close the end of our street. We lived right at the bottom of Mississauga Road, right on Lake Ontario, and like when I was a kid, I guess I was probably about 15, our band would play the street party, and that basically came as an inspiration for the Southside Shuffle, the blues festival I run in September, and that's in Port Credit.
It's so interesting to me that you came from a community that music was important, not just a house. Because the first thing that you said was you had people in the neighborhood from Quebec. So when you first started talking about your musical influences, you're talking about very East Coast, driven, like caught onto that fairly quickly, but also some provincial, some Quebecois sort of culture. Did you realize you were sort of being immersed in like a multicultural musical background that way?
Well, it was. I don't think right at first. I mean, I just I listened to AM radio, and my aunts, who were quite a lot older than me, like they were listening to Elvis Presley and listening to all the popular '50s stuff. So I was also influenced by that, but I'd listen to 1050 Chum, obviously, But on Sunday they would have a show called the Moose Lautrec Show.
Okay.
And I believe it went from 10 o'clock to midnight, and it played the top 40 country hits.
Okay.
And I'd have a little transistor radio, and I'd listen to like Detour and the Auctioneer Song and all the hits, Running Bear and stuff, and but then as all the kids did, and got into the Beatles and stuff like that, the English rock and roll, listened to Chuck Berry and Little Richard and all those guys. But I really started to get into the blues not until probably I was about, I guess, 15.
What was your first exposure to what
I saw Buddy Guy at the exhibition.
Okay.
Played a thing called Time Being. Started my first band in grade 5, but we were playing, like a lot of the stuff like the Beatles and the Monkees and things like that. But then we quickly, after seeing buddy guy just decided blues was what we wanted to do.
Right.
And my guitar player had gone to England on a trip with his family.
Okay.
And came back with a bunch of blues albums,
because that's where it really picked up.
Yeah, like especially the English blues stuff. So he came back, with John Mayall's Blues Breakers, and we were listening to that, and of course the Cream and things. And we were listening to the Cream, the Disraeli Gears album, 6 months before it even broke in the United States.
Really?
We were playing "Sunshine of Your Love" before anybody even heard of it.
Nice.
So a lot of musical influences. We started a band in grade 5 because our music teacher, who was one of those guys, was the typical music teacher back then, where you sing "Eyes to Buy the Built the Boat," or as I went through Sandgate, and and he got sick, and the substitute teacher was a guitar player for Robbie Lane and the Disciples.
Oh wow!
So he started bringing in rock and roll records and stuff. We're going, yeah. So that's when we went, let's start a band. So we started a band in grade 5.
That's amazing.
Yeah.
Do you remember your first performance? Yeah.
Yeah. Well, we played our school. It was funny because we were in grade 7. By the time we got to grade 7, we were we knew maybe about 20 songs. And but the grade 8s they didn't play, but they played air. They had an air guitar band.
Okay.
So when we went on, we blew them away because we were actually playing.
Right.
And but our first paying gig was at the Port Credit Legion, and we got $5 each.
Nice. How old were you then?
48. No. I think I was probably about 16.
Yeah?
Yeah.
You were saying, so Grandpa's he's basically a professional musician, right? I'm guessing he did other things, or was he a professional?
Yeah, he was a truck driver, and that was kind of a thing. He didn't play on it every week. It was more or less he'd get when they were doing some square dancing, or.
But he was good enough that he got called on the TV.
Yes, he did, and then also too, all musicians would come to our house every weekend. It was a party.
It's interesting because you come from a background that is so completely different than what a lot of musicians talk about, and that's the idea that they had to sort of buck against their parents about art even being a thing that was a feasible sort of life goal. You didn't have that, did you?
Well, I mean, I had the same old problems where my grandmother and what happened was, when I was 26 years old, I found out that my oldest sister was my mother. So, but I was raised by my grandparents. Okay. So there was a lot of influence from my little sister saying, you're never going to make it as a musician. You got to get an education. You got to do that. And but my grandfather was always the one that I started as a bass player. He was the guy that went, and bought me a bass and put it on, the layaway plan. I mean, God, back in 1961, 62, he was probably making $60 a week.
Let me go back to something you just said, because there's some family history where I sort of relate to a little bit of that. What was that like hearing? How old were you when you found out your
I was 26 years old
when you found out your mom was your mom?
Yeah.
So you're already an adult. You've already sort of gone through your life.
Yeah.
What was that?
It wasn't a big surprise. I'd always kind of wondered. I mean, I grew up thinking they were my mother and father, not my grandparents. Right?
Okay, yeah.
So, they were pretty old,
Yeah.
And I always kind of thought, this is weird, like lots of kids. And we were dirt poor. I mean, we were very poor. And just thinking well, maybe I was adopted. Maybe, I have a millionaire. Somebody's going to come back and get me. But I mean, but I have no regrets because, I mean, if I wasn't raised by my grandparents, I don't think I'd be where I am today. The musical
much different life, right?
And living where I did, and the guys I grew up with, Angus Mackay was my guitar player, was a major influence on me. Unfortunately, he's passed away, but he had started a record company called Ready Records. He discovered bands like Blue Peter and Spoons and things. And we were very big blues fans. So.
When did music become a business for you?
Well, I mean, we started playing and touring across Canada and probably about 1972.
So right away, almost.
Yeah, we backed up Bo Diddley in Moncton, New Brunswick.
Yeah.
And in 1972, and thought we were on our way. He told us that,
Was that your first real big one? Like, was that the?
Oh, that was a big, that was.
Talk to me about that experience.
Well,
like,
it's pretty.
the beginning.
It's pretty funny. We had a band called A Dancer, and we did kind of the history of rhythm and blues. So we'd start off with blues, and we'd do some old Ray Charles, and bring it right up in James Brown and all that kind of stuff. And we were playing in Moncton, and Bo Diddley was. You do 2 weeks in those days,
right?
And Bo Diddley was following us in the following week, and he was going to be backed up by Dutch Mason. So we were playing on Sunday, and we were actually doing the Ballad of Bo Diddley, which is kind of the Animals version, in a little old country town one day. And we're doing that, and Bo Diddley walks in. And we're playing.
How long did it take you to notice that he was in
you couldn't miss Bo Diddley.
Yeah.
So he had his hat and walked in, and couldn't miss him.
Right.
And, in Moncton, New Brunswick, he was the only black gentleman in the whole town, probably. But he walked right up on stage and started playing tambourine.
That's cool.
While I was singing Bo Diddley, and we were probably 19 years old.
Yeah.
And we're just like, wow. So afterwards, we talked really nice. We get him to come out to our truck and autograph the inside of our truck and get pictures with us. And we say goodbye, and he's starting. The place was called Gentleman Jim's, and they had one in Moncton. They also had one in Fredericton. So we were going now off to play the one in Fredericton.
Right.
And on the Wednesday, we're rehearsing in the morning and in the bar, and then we get a phone call. Do you guys want to come back and back up Bo Diddley? Him and Dutch aren't getting along. So we said, sure. So we packed up our stuff. We had quite a show back then, and our road manager and stuff, and we packed everything up, and it's about a 3.5 hour, 4 hour drive, to Moncton from Fredericton. We got there about 7 o'clock, set all our stuff up. Supposed to start at 9 o'clock. It was like, 3 minutes to 9, and no Bo Diddley, and we're like going, hey, where's Bo?
Right.
What are we gonna play? And he comes wandering in about 2 minutes to 9, with the manager freaking on us, like going, you guys are on in 2 minutes, and we're going, hey Bo, like what do we do? He goes, don't worry about it, son. Said you just got when the bow play, you just got to know how the bow ends his song. So I'm either going to end it wah 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 or diddly 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 diddly. Okay, let's go on. And that was it. We went up and we played with Bo for a week and a half.
For a week and a half.
Yeah.
So the show must have went well.
It went well, and he kept telling us, because that time, Don Kirshner's rock concert was happening,
right?
And he played, and he goes, boys, I love you, boys. I'm going to bring you down. You're going to back me up on rock. Never happened.
Right.
But I still actually have the picture right there of Bo, and there's his autograph on the thing right there.
That's awesome. That's cool.
1972.
Was he a bit of a hero to you, even walking into that situation?
Oh yeah, like we were into all that stuff. Like we were into Bo and Chuck Berry and like we played Bo Diddley. We did so yeah, it was a big thrill.
When did you ever like during that week? Did you have conversations with him like off stage?
Oh yeah.
So what I'm wondering, that first time when he walked in and saw you guys play, did you ever get an idea? Was that just the random, or was he looking for a band? Because when he walked in, he was playing with like they were starting on Monday. Yeah.
So he had no idea who Dutch Mason was either.
Oh, he hadn't even met him at that point.
No, so that's who the club had decided, or the agent decided would be good to back him up.
Gotcha.
Which makes sense to me. I would think that Dutch Mason's band would be killer.
Right.
But then they played the Monday night to Tuesday night, and I guess they weren't getting along or something. And in those days, Dutch and the boys liked to hit the sauce pretty good.
Yeah.
And so they just had decided that. He said, well, why don't I get those boys that play with me, are they around?
So just kismet.
Yeah.
That's awesome.
And he was funny. He kept calling it a mountain, New Brunswick, instead of Moncton. And you remember they had like the pong.
Yeah.
The pong with the tennis. Yeah. So and also, they had a popcorn machine. He'd never seen a popcorn machine before. So he was constantly just eating popcorn. Man, the popcorn, the best popcorn I ever had, man. And he's watching us play the pong, me and the guitar player. And he's looking and goes, man, I never seen nothing like that before. I said, man, you looks like you've got to have a college education to play a game like that.
Really?
And I go, no, Bo, it's simple to play, man, simple. He wouldn't play. And then finally, on the Saturday, afternoon, because we do a matinee too. We go in and he's sitting there with his popcorn, with the machine, playing the machine, because you can play it with a person or by yourself.
Right.
But you had to turn a button. Yeah. To make it so you're playing the machine, and he didn't do that. He was playing. Somebody else, but there was nobody else, and he was still losing. You know? But he was a great guy. Like, we had a ball with him. And it was funny too, because, you know, right after it, at first he comes in, you know, he goes, you know, Chuck, you know, I've been here, man, for this 3 days now, man. I don't have a dressing room, you know. I always get a dressing room. So I went up to the manager and said, Bo wants a dressing room, you know. He goes, well, we don't have a dressing room. He said, we got a cloakroom, we can clear that up. So they took out the mops and stuff. And he had a room, like, basically you could barely turn around in. They put a chair in there. And that was it. And he'd go in there, everything. And then after about the second week, we don't know where Bo is. And the manager said, come on, get him on. And we'd see he took some girl into the cloakroom. So it got to the thing, like, somebody's got to go get Bo. And I'm going, well, I'm not getting him. And it kind of went down, you know, the ladder, like, until it got to the drummer and said, well, it looks like you're getting him. And the drummer went up and said, not there goes, 5 minutes, Mr. Diddley. He goes, I'll be out when I'm ready. You know? But yeah, he was funny.
So that seems to be like your first introduction to what you considered to be stardom in music.
Yeah.
But not your last.
No, not our last at all. I mean, you know, then I played with that band for 10 years, and then we basically changed.
You guys toured all over the place, right?
We toured, yeah, all over Canada, and but we were more like a show band. Just here, but it was more like a show band, like, you know. Okay. I did, like, you know, like the James Brown stuff with the Splits, and we did the Cape and all that stuff. But then the band evolved, and, you know, until about 1978. Doing different kinds of music and stuff like that to stay working. And then I got an offer, because we were a blues band to begin with, but we were told we ended up being managed by Chuck Beal, who was the guitar player for the Poppers. Right. And he said, you know, you're not going to make it playing blues, man, you know. So, you know, you start doing a little more pop and start writing. He influenced into writing too, which was quite good.
You hadn't been writing before?
We hadn't been writing. We were just doing kind of show stuff and that, you know. And then I got a call from my friend John Bride in the Cameo Blues Band. And Cameo was playing at a house gig in Toronto at the Hotel Isabella. Right. And they asked me to come and be the singer. And I was with Robert Ray Harrison and John and Omar Tunik, who later was the bass player for Fathead, and Billy Bryans, who started Parachute Club. And so we were playing there 6 nights a week for 3 years. And we became one of the most popular bands in Toronto. What
year is this? Like,
that was 1978, the Cameo Blues
So
Band.
End of 70s, beginning of the 80s in Toronto, right? Yeah. Talk to me about what the music scene, the Canadian, because really that's all of the Canadian music scene for the most part, because anything that's anywhere ends up coming into Toronto.
Oh, exactly.
Right?
Yeah.
So talk to me about what the Canadian music scene is like at the end of the 70s, beginning of the 80s.
Well, it was hopping. I mean, Yonge Street was still hopping, right? And the area, you know, Yonge Street was starting to kind of die a bit, and it was moving over to like Jarvis and stuff, and you know, because the Edge was there, the Jarvis House. I mean, we played at the Izzy. I mean, Dan Ack, that's where we met Dan Aykroyd and Belushi. You know, I playing one night. You know, we used to end the night with Rocket 88, Jackie Brenson song, but was made famous by James Cotton, and. You know, I'm just blowing the harp and got my eyes closed and opened my eyes, and James Cotton's standing right in front of me. So I just went like, here, you take it. And he took it and started playing, and it was like, you know, at those times, I think the bars still were closing at 1 o'clock in the morning. Right. So it was like, you know, 5 to 1. And I don't know if you ever been to Isabella, but the Cameo Lounge was not much bigger than this area here. Okay. Might sit maybe at the most 80 people. And the owner of the thing said, okay, you got a choice. I'm going to lock the doors up in a couple minutes. You can either go home or stay. And everybody stayed. Really? So it was James Cotton and Muddy Waters Band, because they had been playing at Ontario Place. Okay. Muddy didn't come, but his band did. Right. And we played till 4:30 in the morning, man.
Just jammed out.
Jam with James Cotton and Muddy Waters Band that was a big thrill.
That must have.
And that bar, man, was like, it was really hopping. I mean, Sting came to see us there. We ended up playing the Police Picnic.
How did that come about?
Because they were at the edge.
They just happened to walk through.
They were at the edge across the street. Everybody at that time, the Imperial Lounge was like the place to go. Right. And that's how I first got to meet Donnie from Downchild and stuff like that. They'd come after being on the road and jam with us, and it was just the place to go.
Was it a community? Like musicians in Toronto, was it a community? Like, did everybody kind of know each other, or was it?
Well, it was a place to go for the blues community.
Yeah.
But then it was also when people came to Toronto, they'd say, like, where do you go? Like the musician, like we got to be so well known, and the band had never even toured. Like we just played there,
right,
6 nights a week. So it was always advertised on Q and stuff like that. That they did a thing one time about who was Toronto's most popular band, and there were bands like Triumph and things in there, and we finished second. But we didn't even have a record out.
Right.
But
were you doing original stuff though?
No, we were doing some original stuff, and then we did eventually the second year start putting original stuff on our show.
Right.
And we did have one 45 that we released that we did at Grand Avenue that. Oh gosh, I'm having a brain freeze here. Who was famous producer? Yeah, thank you, Danny Lanois.
Yeah,
and Danny produced that, and I don't know what he's doing these days. I don't think he was successful after that.
I'm trying to figure out how to ask this particular question because it's not really a fair question of you. I understand. So right around that time, you're in the Cameo band, and at that time, Donnie and his brother are kind of like in and out.
Well, that happened a lot. Like Donnie and his brother just never did get along.
Right.
So Hawk obviously was the original singer, but then after that, Tony Flame would be singer, and Tony and Donnie didn't get along great either. Okay. So a lot of times, Hawk would have an argument, then he'd leave. Yeah. And then they get Tony, and then Tony and him would have an argument, and Hawk would come back. And like before me, in the first, the band now is next year celebrating 50 years.
Right.
It'll be my 30th.
Right.
And before me, the first 20 years, there were basically about just 3 singers. It was Hawk and Flame and John Whitmer, who was the singer, for, oh gosh.
There's a lot of them. There's a lot of albums.
Yeah.
There's a lot of bands. There's a lot of albums.
Yeah.
Downchild's been around for a long time.
Whiskey Hal. I'm sorry. John Whitmer was the lead singer for Whiskey Hal.
Okay.
Who really, when I was starting to play the blues and stuff in '69, that basically the only 2 blues bands in Toronto were Downchild and Whiskey Hal.
Right.
And Whiskey Hal was my favorite.
Did you follow these guys around before you got involved with them?
Well, yeah. I mean, I listened to them and stuff. I mean, it was a thrill for me to end up being the singer for Downchild.
Talk to me about how that process came about.
Well, so in 1990, Pat Carey, I broke up with my first wife, and I was living with Pat Carey. We shared a house, and he was playing with Downchild. He had been playing with Downchild for a while. He's a sax player, and when they were looking for a new singer, he suggested me, and I auditioned, and I think at first Donnie wasn't too thrilled with me being the singer, but I guess I kind of grew on him, so Pat Carey, who now has been in the Downchild, he's the only guy that's been in the band longer than me.
Right.
Now I think he's been in the band about 37 years.
Wow.
And the newest member now has been about 20. So.
Talk to me about your history with Downchild, because you guys have kind of gone all over the place.
We've
it's a little different than playing the same venue 6 nights a week, right?
It was a big difference for that, and I had done that previous to Cameo on the road, and it was really a thrill to not have to go anywhere and make good money. I mean, the money was actually good at the Izzy, and it gave you a really good thing too. Like we rehearsed all the time, and the band was very, very.
Well, because it almost becomes, was it a full-time gig at that point? Like if you're playing there 6 days a week, were you doing other jobs on the side, or was your?
Well, no, not while I was at the Izzy, but I played with that Cameo for 14 years, and at one time I was playing in both bands. I was playing in Cameo and playing in Downchild.
Okay.
So then it got to be too tough to schedule, so they ended up getting another singer. Downchild started with like on the road all the time, doing, probably about 180 gigs a year and stuff, and it's very much different now. We probably only do about maybe 30 gigs a year. Next year, of course, with the 50th anniversary, we'll be touring all over. But we played, everywhere in Canada. We used to do stuff in the States, but Donnie moved to Costa Rica about 15 years ago for the winter. I'd go down there and play with him. We do that. But we played in Europe. We played in France, Denmark, Norway.
Yeah.
The internet's really opened up, the whole world to especially blues and stuff like that. All the blues societies all over the world.
It's interesting because we're kind of at a time, and I mean we were talking about this a little bit. You guys were talking about it a little bit even before we sat down, and I mean it's a hot topic back home with the Blues Fest kind of moving some acts that are outside of blues. You run a blues festival yourself, the Southside Shuffle. That's really well known for blues across Canada. I think it's only really rivaled by the Blues Fest, the Ottawa Blues Fest, as far as blues festivals go in Canada. What's your sort of perspective on blues music today? Because it kind of not takes a backseat. It's almost given a backseat these days, right?
It's always been given a backseat. I mean, there's very few times that you have certain times when someone comes, like when the Blues Brothers did the Blues Brothers movie, then blues kind of came forward, to the front of young people's. Started to realize what blues was all about. And thanks to the Blues Brothers, they got the songs. They even on their very first album, they did two Downchild songs, and said, here right on the album, they said, here's a song by the Downchild Blues Band. So it opened up for people to, basically research and find out who the original artists were, which was the same thing that happened when the British invasion happened with the bands like the Stones doing blues and Clapton and all those guys. That's how I discovered who the real guys were, like, by listening to those guys, and then, looking for the original artists like B.B. King and like Albert King and Robert Johnson and things like that. But, the thing is that the Blues Brothers and Stevie Ray Vaughan became very famous, even with Jeff Healey and Roadhouse and stuff. So every once in a while you get a little shot. But I think the internet and now satellite radio and stuff, that there's actual stations dedicated to the blues. Mm-hmm. It's definitely now for Canadian artists much better at showcasing your music and than it's ever been.
I am, and I don't know, maybe it's on my own bias or whatever, but I am amazed to hear you say that, because I actually kind of agree with you. Well, not kind of, I agree with you, but it is so rare to hear any artists, especially over the age of, say, 35, 40, people who've actually grew up especially professionals that dealt with the old sort of record system versus now. It's rare to hear anybody past 40 say that the way it's happening now is actually beneficial.
I think it's, people say, the blues isn't as popular. I think that's a bunch of crap. I think the blues is more popular than it's ever been. Now, the blues is always going to be, you're only going to get a percentage of what people are listening to. It's probably in Canada, being such a small country and population-wise, that we probably 3 to 4% of the people listen to. But if you take that 3 to 4% in the United States, that's a lot of people listening to the blues.
Well, especially you even go bigger than that when you're talking about global, right?
Yeah, exactly. Norway, they've got the largest blues society in Europe.
Norway just owns music now, right?
Yeah.
Like, isn't that just how it works? Like, all good music just goes to the fjords?
Yeah, and we played it. We loved it. It's fantastic. And, you know, it just, you know, you can take a handful of Canadian blues artists, maybe one hand, and a handful of American blues artists that are going to be able to, like, say, fill, you know, a Massey Hall or something like that. Like, you'll get a Buddy Guy and stuff, but a lot of them can't fill, you know, hall. But when it comes to a festival, you got them all on that. You know, Downchild's one of the few bands. We just play, you know, we just play theaters and blues festivals. We don't play bars.
Right.
So, you know, a lot of the bands in Canada, like, you know, you got Colin James. He'll fill, you know, he'll get 10,000 people. But as a whole, I mean, look, I've been living and making a living playing blues, and that's all I do. You know, I don't have a day job or anything like that. And you know, it's you just have to be. I mean, for example, like when I'm not playing with Downchild, I still play in bars. Mm-hmm. I have a house band gig in Port Credit at a bar called Rockin' Docks. I've been playing there every Sunday for 24 years.
Right.
You know, and you know, I have a piano player. I play with Tyler Urema, who plays with Powder Blues when they play out east here. And so we do duos, you know, but that's how we play during the week, Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, because most bars can't afford to hire a whole band. Mm-hmm. So you have to, you know, be able to be flexible if you want to keep playing and you know, just...
It's so refreshing to me because instead of saying everything I was just about to say, I'm going to ask you this. What would you say to younger musicians, kids that are just picking up a guitar or harmonica for the first time right now and are looking at an industry that's completely different than the one that you were looking at growing up? What would you say to them?
Well,
what's the same and what's different between where you were coming from and where they're
Well, the big difference now is, you know, like, you know, the bar business. I mean, you know, we grew up playing bars, and when I first started, you know, you'd play a bar for a month. And then, you know, it got to 2 weeks, so you'd play, you know, like you'd play Monday to Saturday. You know, the bars weren't open on Sundays. And you'd do a Saturday matinee. And, you know, you traveled all over. Now, you know, it's tougher for young people to actually get out there and actually play live gigs. And that's why you're seeing so much of stuff on YouTube and people getting hits and young people, that's the way that they think they're going to make it big and stuff like that. And it does work. But it certainly doesn't give you that expertise of playing with other people or playing in front of an audience, you know.
And what do you talk to me about that part of it? Because I've watched your performance videos, and performance is very important to you, and I can see that. And I wonder what your perspective on that sort of the online performer versus the live performer is.
Well, you know, in a way, you know, it's almost like. You know, when we started out, and the thing was that people would say, okay, you're really good live now, but you have to learn now, you know, it's completely different in the studio when you're recording an album.
Yeah.
So you need to get experience in both, and I think it's the same thing. That's great that you can showcase yourself on YouTube and stuff and other social media, but you still have to get in front of people and play. I mean, you know, even... like you hear so much of even the big stars that are touring around that you know, made it on America's Got Talent or The Voice or something, that, you know, they after being out on the road for, like, you know, 2 weeks or something, they're losing their voices and stuff because they've never done it.
Right.
You know, and I always thought it'd be fun, you know, like a good reality show would be, you know, like Blues School. And, you know, you get these young people and you put them in a truck and you know, it wouldn't even have to go anywhere, but it'd be just shaking and starting. You have to sit
drive them around for 8 hours.
They have to sit there for 8 hours and you know, and, you know, they have to, you know, drink a bottle of vodka and, right. You know, and then, okay, now go out and play,
right.
You know, yeah. And then see if you can do it, you know. But it just, it's a new world of it. You do have to get out. There's the good thing about the blues is they're still in Toronto. There's still a lot of jams, a lot of places. Yeah. Young people come out. I get a lot of young people coming out to Rockin' Docks, even though it's not an open jam. But we'll get somebody up to give them a chance, and a lot of them will come out. And now I have them on the Southside Shuffle, you know, like, young people. We have a junior jam we've had for years. I'm very proud of that. All kids under 18 Mark Burt Stafford gets them up, and we support the talent search for the Toronto Blues Society. The winners of that always come and play the Southside Shuffle. So we're trying to keep the blues happening. There's tons and tons of great young blues players right now, and especially in Canada. I mean, we're going down to Memphis for the Blues Challenge, and we're winning now. Downchild Watson won last year for the first time. Jack DeKaiser won it. Downchild Watson's guitar player, Ben. I'm sorry, I forget Ben's last name. But Ben won for guitar player. So we're very, very lucky here in Toronto and Southern Ontario, the talent of blues players. It's amazing.
Do you think professional musician is a viable career in 2018?
Not maybe as it traditionally has been. I think it's getting tougher and tougher. I wouldn't want to be a musician starting out now. I think it's more of a challenge. We were lucky as baby boomers, it just right from Elvis and early rock and roll and stuff that the people that we grew up with were used to live music and used to going to restaurants and hearing live music. I mean, my bar, I play it on Sundays. Those 24 years, I bet people have been coming for the whole 24 years. And if they don't show up, they're either sick or unfortunately they might pass away.
Yeah.
And it's a challenge to get younger people. We do get a lot of people that come to Downchild gigs, and it's grandfather and son and grandson. But like my very first gig with Downchild 30 years ago, I did the first set, and this young girl comes up to me after, and she said, very young, attractive, beautiful girl, said, "You're so good. I love the way you sing, and the band sounds great." And I didn't even think I even liked the blues. I didn't even want to come, but my grandparents have all your records. So she came with her grandparents.
That was your first show.
Yeah, that was the first show, and I went,
That's funny. Yeah. Talk to me about touring.
Yeah, it's a lot easier than it used to be.
Yeah?
Oh, yeah.
Why is that?
Well, we fly now most of the time. We fly places. We don't do the big bus tours anymore.
Yeah.
A band like Downchild, I mean, as I said, the newest kind of band's been here for 20 years. And people, when we fly, we don't even sit together,
Do you like it that way, or do you think?
Yeah, we like it that way.
Yeah.
I mean, we all get along great, but we
especially when we're with
we all
each
live
other.
in, we don't live near each other.
Yeah.
We all live in different parts of Ontario.
It's so funny. Do you remember being a kid in your first band, putting it together? Did you have, maybe it was different for you because you came up through a community of musicians and you could see the transition, but for me, my first bands was always like, all right, it's the four of us and we're gonna do this, and together and boy does it beat the snot out of you to realize, oh no, this is gonna shuffle up a bunch of times.
Oh, I was like that. I mean, the guys I started my band in grade 5, I mean, we thought we'd be the next Beatles.
Right.
It's like, and we did play together for a long time, but that band changed.
Yeah.
I mean, yeah, you learn very quickly, especially after that, when I started to branch off even from Cameo and stuff and do my own gigs, I'd have players that I wanted to play in my band, and found out very quickly that everybody in Toronto subs. Whoever offers you the most money, it could be $10 more,
they're gone.
Usually they're going to gone. So you had to have, even now at my gig on Sundays, I have about 3 piano players and
right.
4 guitar players and guys that, So my band, I've got a gig tomorrow night. I've got 2 gigs Saturday and 2 gigs Sunday, and different musicians for every one of those bands almost.
Right. I almost get the feeling that that's part of the fun, though.
It is part of the fun. It's a challenge too. I mean, and also I do a lot of shows now that are very popular, where there's a Saturday afternoon matinee. There's a house band, but they have a guest singer every week to keep it fresh.
Oh,
so you go in and you have to, basically cue them what songs, and just kind of know what songs to pick.
That's pretty cool. How long's that been going?
Well, it's been going for a while, probably, 20 years.
Really? It still draws well?
Yeah, like you know, there different clubs do it all the time.
It's got to be different because like, and I mean, you're familiar with Windsor because you guys have played so much, and I mean, from the conversations that I have, Windsor is a different town now than it was even 20 years ago. But it seems to me that because you're so close to Toronto, because you're basically talking about Toronto, there's the audience is there more, so it gives you more opportunities even to do some more niche stuff.
Well, the audiences are there, and also the musicians are there. So,
that helps.
So the thing is that, you know, like, you can do a year of Sundays and have different musicians every week,
and it'll just spin through.
And it's good because it keeps the people coming back because they're not hearing the same old thing every week, right?
Now, those guys that are showing up to those gigs, are they you know, basement players, or are they?
No, these are professional musicians.
Oh, really?
That once again, just you can't make a living playing in one band, so you do. Guess what? You just fill your calendar up. You know,
it's so interesting to me because it's the concept of I don't know, the journeyman musician. It almost simultaneously seems like an old-timey idea and then a very new idea, but it's just been constant.
It hasn't changed. It hasn't changed since back in the days in the Apollo Theater, where, you know, the guys would play, you know, in the afternoon, and then they do a show right after school ended and stuff like that. Then they change their clothes and go uptown and put on white tuxedos and play for the white folks, and then come back and play the close of the Apollo, and then do house rent parties until 4 a.m. You know, like everybody I play with play in multiple bands.
Right.
That's the only way you can make a living now, being, you know, a blue collar musician.
Talk to me about because we've got a concert coming up that I get to share a stage with you guys. I'm very excited about that. Tell me about your relationship with Kim.
Well, I've known Kim, gosh, I think about 30 years. I mean, it's one of those things, you know, you can't remember not knowing him.
Right.
It's been so long.
Yeah.
But Kim was always a great guy, you know, always front and center. You know, if you said, Chuck, I want to book you, you always knew you were going to be taken care of. You always knew you were going to get paid at the end. You know,
it was a big deal.
Yeah, for sure. You know, and he'd play sax with us too and stuff like that. And always a good guy, and, you know, one of those characters that we've known for years out of Windsor. You know, there's a few characters out of Windsor over the years that we've met, and you know, it was always a great city for Downchild to play. You know, and it just one of those ones where you could go and there'd be like, every time you went, you'd play like a different venue.
Right.
And it's just not like that much anymore, right?
Yeah, no. It's
a lot of places aren't.
Yeah.
You know, we used to go to Ottawa all the time, and over, you know, 30 years, I was in a band and never played same club more than once, you know. If somebody closed one and they'd open up another one.
Right.
You know, I always laugh at, you know, my mother telling me I'd never make it in business, but I've outlasted a lot of bars.
That's hilarious. We've got December 7th coming up at Walkerville Theater. Downchild Blues Band. I get to jump up on the stage as well. Thank you for spending some time with me here. This is such a pleasure.
Oh man, it was fun. Thank you for coming all the way to Brantford.
Oh yeah, of course. You know? We'll see you December 7th.
All the best.
All right, folks, that'll do it for this episode of the AVB Podcast. We hope you enjoyed it. If you did, be sure to go down and click on the subscribe button to make sure that you can continue seeing our episodes as we put them out. We do a lot of videos, and there's a couple of them here that we hope you'll enjoy. There's one up there that we think you might like, and of course, there's one of our playlists down there for you. Make sure you say hello to some of our sponsors in the links down below while you're there, and of course, you can find links there to today's guest and all of our other social media. Thanks for hanging out with us. We'll see you next time.